Well, to all the people of Kentucky, you have a beautiful opportunity to send an America First candidate to Washington, D.C. to truly reflect what the people of Kentucky want. An opportunity that you have not had to fill Mitch McConnell's seat for almost 40 years at this point. This could cement control of the Senate in the second half of President Trump's term and into the next president's term as well. But before we get into it, drop down below, hit that subscribe button, make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. So as you all, I'm sure, are well aware at this point, Mitch McConnell announced that he will not be running for re-election. Announced this on Thursday, saying he's going to leave his seat open for a GOP contender who's looking to make the move to move up the ranks in the GOP in Kentucky. But will he, the real question is going to really come down to is what type of replacement is he going to have? Are we going to have an independent type Republican, or are we going to have more of a Trump MAGA Republican? Now, Kentucky is a state that a Trump MAGA Republican could very well win in. There's no doubt about that. Are we going to have a more traditional established conservative or an America First candidate? Obviously very, very different. And a few people have shown interest in replacing McConnell at this point. People like Daniel Cameron, who's the former Kentucky Attorney General, threw his hat in the ring. And I believe as of right now, he is the only one on the Republican side who has actually declared he's going to be running. Now, we do have some other people who have publicly expressed interest, and some other people whose names are kind of running in those circles right now. But notably, who's not running? Obviously, the big one is going to be Dave Osborne, who's the Speaker of the House in Kentucky, Mitch McConnell, which we all know, and then Representative James Comer. Now, I really believe it is time for a new generation of leadership, not just in Kentucky, but it is a time for a new generation of leadership in America. For too long, we have been, how do you say this, controlled by this uniparty, where on these issues where Democrats and Republicans, it doesn't matter what party you're in, these people come together and they make deals behind your back to really advance their own interest, the interest of their donors, and really just looking out for themselves. And, on one hand, can you blame them? They're human, but also at the same time, you're a public servant. You're better than that. But now, let's just take a look at the different candidates that we could potentially have for this race here. Let's look down here. So obviously, Daniel Cameron, he was the Attorney General of Kentucky from 2019 to 2023, ran unsuccessfully, even though he is endorsed by President Trump in 2023 for the governor's mansion, lost by a couple points to Andy Beshear, one of the few Democrats left in the state of Kentucky that can win. We see a lot of those people left. You kind of look that are starting to disappear. People like John Tester in Montana. It was broken finally. You're not going to be this run as a moderate Democrat, get to Washington, and then vote 90% of the time with the far left. Like, it's just not going to happen anymore. And it's different when you're on a state level. You're not being sent off to Washington to advance the interest of your state in D.C. at our capital. But Daniel Cameron, defeated by Andy Beshear in 2023. Really, he's he's a conservative with many strong positions, like a big emphasis on law and order, pro-life issues, and defending the Second Amendment. Those are big, big things. And he's also known for a strict interpretation of limited government and having beliefs of limited government. That is a huge thing for me when I'm looking at candidates. And now, would not be my representative. I do not live in Kentucky. But I want a conservative who wants limited government. I like people like Thomas Massie or Rand Paul or even Ron Paul. Those are the types of people that I like. I want them, regardless of what party's doing it, I want someone who's going to do everything they can to slash the federal government. And now Trump, they're doing a lot of good things with Doge right now. Don't get me wrong. They're doing a lot of good things. But at the same time, they're going to, cement Trump's tax cuts from 2017 and further extend them, which, unless there are proportionate cuts to the federal government in the size of trillions of dollars, we're going to continue to run up a larger and larger deficit at this point. Another person who has also looked at throwing his name in the ring is the U.S. representative from Kentucky's 6th congressional district for, I believe, since about 2012, 2013, is Andy Barr. Now, he is a mainstream conservative, very conservative economic policies, and he right now, I believe, is let's see if it says it in here. I believe he is a member or the ranking member of the House Financial Services Committee, where really he's been a big push for pro-business policies and limited regulation. He's and also a very vocal supporter of veterans issues. That's a big thing. You have to make sure we're taking care of our veterans. Veterans cannot come at the expense of cutting the federal budget. There's a lot of places I'll cut the federal budget. It does not come at the expense of the VA. Absolutely not, especially our veterans. We should almost be spending more money on our veterans. They gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country. We should not be slashing their benefits because the rest of the government was mismanaged. But like I said, very, very mainstream conservative on financial issues, lower taxes, deregulation, and strong national defense. I think he would be it's like I think any of these people would be a good Republican, but ultimately there is one who you would almost have it wouldn't be a trifecta because there's not three, but do you call it a bifecta? I'm sure there's a different word for it, and I'm just stupid and can't think of it. But if you had Rand Paul and Thomas Massie as the senators from Kentucky, that would just be like, whoa. Talk about a player move. Like, the state of Kentucky is not messing around. They want someone who's going to go in slash. Like Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. Slash it. Do everything you can. Now, Thomas Massie's name isn't on this list here, which is kind of sad. Why isn't Thomas Massie's name on this list, even though we know that he's shown potential interest in running for the seat? Obviously, we know he's a staunch libertarian conservative, heavily aligned with small government principles, fiscal conservatism, and really a strict adherence to the Constitution. Massie, you could almost say that his ideologies are in line with someone like a Ron Paul. Very strong advocate for gun rights, limited government, smaller government, individual rights, individual liberties. And like I said earlier, what I like about him, consistently votes against bills that are fiscally irresponsible, regardless of what party it comes from. He's going to vote against something if it's fiscally irresponsible. Now, I think he got very, very notable attention back in 2020 when he insisted that when Congress voted on the COVID-19, or when they voted on that stimulus package in 2020, he said that if it's going to pass Congress, it needs to go through with a proper vote, where people come in and actually vote. It was not just going to be a unanimous vote or I forget what they call that. It's basically where they don't have to vote. It's like a voice vote. I forget what the name of it's called. But at that time, both parties were ripping on him. Trump was ripping on him. It's like everybody was ripping on him across the aisle. But it just shows he's unwavering in his beliefs. Who do you want? Do you want someone who's going to be a pushover? Which, there's a difference. Let's make a difference. There's a difference between pragmatic and being a pushover. Get in as much as you can versus being a pushover and just giving in. Very big difference, but ultimately we know Thomas Massie unwavering in his beliefs in what he's going to do. I think all three of these Republicans would be relatively good Republicans. I think ultimately I would go in the order of Thomas Massie, and then Daniel Cameron, then Andy Barr, if it were me. But obviously, different factors, different focuses. What are going to be the priorities in the 2026 election in Kentucky? Obviously, we know Thomas Massie, he is a libertarian. Cameron is your law and order conservative. And Barr is probably a more policy-focused legislator. Deregulation stuff. So it's like you have different types of Republicans that you're looking at here. But it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. Now, who is out of the race? Who is not? Who do we know is not going to be running? Well, from the Democrat side, we know Andy Beshear is not going to be running. Obviously, Bashir is term limited and cannot seek re-election, but not interested in moving to the Senate at this point, according to his spokesperson. Which really, huge blow to the Democrats. My God, you have one of the few Democrats left in the state of Kentucky who can win a statewide election. Like, and he's not interested in moving up. It's like that's just sad almost, for the Democrats at least. But maybe he's looking at 2028. Maybe there's a bigger picture he's trying to look at here. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know if it's like, I think he'd be on the, if I were a Democrat, I'm not a Democrat, but if I were a Democrat and I'm looking at 2028, who am I, and I actually want to win and I want to get as much done as I possibly can, I'm looking at people like Andy Bashir. I'm looking at people like Josh Shapiro. I'm trying to think of who else would be a good Democrat. And I shouldn't say a good Democrat, but if I were a Democrat, who would you look at and be like, okay, this is a more moderate person, maybe pragmatic, have a lot of energy. I just don't think if you're looking at someone like Tim Walz, you're like beta male, wife's got his balls in her purse, like, let's just be real about it. Gavin Newsom, it's like California, just look at California. It sucks there. You know, it doesn't, what do you want to look at? You want to look at how unprepared they are for disasters? Do you want to look at how the state of California has totally screwed over the insurance, and I'm not screwed over the insurance industry, but they've screwed over individuals in the state of California from obtaining insurance at a reasonable cost relative to the risk that the insurance company has taken on. The state of California, even though they've had these massive fires that insurance companies have paid out hundreds of billions of dollars for, they refused to let insurance companies raise rates. Refused to. And so what did the insurance companies do? Well, we're just not going to do business there anymore. And why do you think that they have so many uninsured people in the state of California that have to get on the California State Fair Plan, which at the time of those fires that just happened about a month ago, there was about $50 billion in exposure to the California State Fair Plan. And there was about $200 million in cash on hand. So you know who's paying for that? The federal government, and more, let's reframe that, taxpayers. All of the taxpayers in America are paying for it. Instead of letting insurance companies do what they need to do and be able to raise rates to meet the risk, which ultimately it's either you pay more money for your insurance or you don't have insurance, or you have to get insurance through the State Fair Plan where they have limited coverage, and who knows if they're even going to be able to pay out when time comes. So talk about Gavin Newsom totally screwed things up in California. If it wasn't already screwed up before, it's like he's terrible. Terrible governor. You look at, I don't know, people like Kathy Hochul. I think she's been terrible for New York. You look at the crime that's going on there. It's like, who else is there really out there that you look at and you're like, yes, that's the person. It's like most of the Democrats are just a bunch of beta males. So I don't know why, they need to win the young vote again. And when they're losing 70-30 to the Republicans are picking up, have 70% of young male support. Good luck to the Democrats. Good luck. Good luck winning elections. But back to this, as far as the GOP side, Representative James Comer, who's the House Oversight Committee chairman, has come out, said not going to run for the Senate, but is strongly considering running for governor in 2027. Now, all we know, Kentucky, they have an off year. They're always in the first year, where the first year after an election, after a presidential election, that's when they do their elections for the governor's office. So we could see what could happen there. Obviously, James Comer, very, very good representative from Kentucky. But let's see on the Democrat side, Pamela Stevens, who's the minority leader of the Kentucky House of Representatives, and who was the nominee for Attorney General in 2023, obviously lost. Don't really know much about her, to be honest with you. She's a liberal. I can't assume that it's like, you're a Democrat in Kentucky. Things can't be that great for you. But ultimately, this is going to be a solid, whoever wins the GOP primary is most likely going to win the Senate race. Especially if Andy Bashir's not jumping in. It's like this is a solid red seat. I would not be too worried about it. I'd be more worried about the primary, about getting the right Republican there than I would be about the actual general election. But hey, that's just me. That's just my opinion. What the hell do I know? I'm just some guy on YouTube, whatever. But for today, that's going to wrap things up. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Subscribe so you don't ever miss another video. And to all of our subscribers out there, just want to say we appreciate you very much. Thank you for entrusting us to give you up-to-date information. Make sure we get the best stuff in front of you at all times. And until next time.